Well, it is Linda Ugolo here, and I welcome you to the Delight in the Limelight show. I am the creator of the Delight in the Limelight Accelerator, as well as author of the book Delight in the Limelight. I work to get people from the dread of speaking to loving it instead. And I have to admit that something I am not is competitive. I've never thought of myself as competitive. And yet I'm very curious about what it is like inside the mind of somebody who is. And so today I have on the podcast with me Dr. Iain Lampert, who is a public speaking competition expert. And I thought four, but it seems like now it's a five-time national champion. Congratulations to you, Iain. And
Thank you.
together you're welcome. We're going to uncover valuable lessons from the world of competitive speaking and how they translate into real world communication for entrepreneurs, professionals, and leaders. So, welcome, Iain.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate your time.
Yes, I appreciate yours. And I want to start right there, like the mind of the competitor. What do you love about competing in speaking?
I like knowing that the impact of my messages are memorable and that they leave an impact such that somebody can measure it, compare it to other messages, and say, I think that that's the one that stood out for me for the right reasons. I also think it's useful for a lot of folks who haven't engaged in a lot of speaking before, because it's tough to know if you're getting honest feedback a lot of the time. Let's say that you speak in front of your friends and family. They might be unconditionally loving and supportive. And that's great, but it doesn't tell you what an unbiased third party might think about your message. Having the opportunity to present in front of a group of people who have no dog in the fight either way, who aren't there to protect your feelings, but who care about the general activity, and they want to see you succeed and grow, means that I've got a way of knowing that what I'm saying makes sense in what seems like it'd be a more stressful environment, but ends up being a safer environment, because better I test this message at a competition than I put it out for public view without knowing how any unbiased third party might think about it. That's how I conceptualize public speaking competitions.
Wow, I would never have guessed that it would feel like it's a safer environment. But the way you describe it, it sounds like people are there for the purpose of helping you become better. Is
Yes,
that correct?
absolutely. Judges are rooting for people to succeed at competitions. You might find the odd person who's there because they have a power trip and they want to tell everyone how wrong they're being. But in general, judges' ballots follow the path of least resistance, which means they're going to vote for the person who have the least things that are incorrect about their structure or their style or their substance. A judge loves seeing, hey, that was great. I've got nothing really to say. That was an awesome message. First place. Love to see it. They'd prefer to have that experience than someone who they have to point out 20 things that they'd want to improve about their speech.
And so when you compete, is there that element of evaluation? Do people actually learn and get feedback?
Yes, I think that any competition that doesn't prioritize feedback is a waste of your time.
Okay. All right. And you also said for the right reasons. What right reasons are the right reasons of doing a speech?
You have a message that you want to share that answers three important questions. The first question is, why me? In other words, why am I the right messenger to share this story? The second is, why you? Why the judge or a hypothetical audience member would care? And the third is, why now? Why at this time in American, Canadian, global society, why at this time is this the appropriate message to share? If you believe that your message can tick all three of those boxes, answer all three of those questions, you're probably doing it for the right reasons.
Mhm.
If you're just doing it because you think you're saying a thing to win an award for the award's own sake, I think you should do some soul searching and find, is there another reason beyond just this trophy that's going to be forgotten in your garage at some point, beyond that, for you to be doing
Mhm.
this competition?
Yeah. Yeah. So I know, let's say that Toastmasters also have an element of competition, but you're not talking about Toastmasters, you're talking about another kind of competitive world. Can you describe
Toastmasters
that?
too.
Uh-huh.
Toastmasters too. I think
Mhm.
that Toastmasters is not a season-long contest. They'll have the Tall Tales contest, table topics, international speech competition. But it's not as if you're doing the international speech competition every month or two. And that means it's quite different from the competitive circuit that a younger person could get into in high school or collegiate speech and debate, where they might be competing every week or every other week. A lot of people don't know this, but there are collegiate teams that recruit the top high schoolers, the same that you would see in a sports team, and say, we'll give you a scholarship if you could do speech competitions for us regularly.
Wow.
People who go through that world, I think, emerge with a very different mindset as opposed to somebody who might just do Toastmasters and compete once a year.
Mhm. Mhm. So do you primarily work with the high school collegiate age group, or do you also work with adults?
Primarily, it's high school and college. Then there's a
Mhm.
sizable adult population as well. In general, the adults aren't coming into it because they thought at the start, I want to win a competition. It's more, I want to expand my storytelling and confidence skills. But I realize a great way to do that, to hold myself accountable, is a competition.
Mm. So the people who kind of come into your world, do they already feel, like, really excited and eager, or do you need to or do they need to develop, like, a particular kind of mindset in order to step into the competitive arena? Because I would think that it would feel very high stakes, and there would be a level of concern or worry or anxiety that goes along with that. Is that true, or are people kind of, like, in a different, space
No, that's very
mentally?
true. Unless somebody has competed before, typically in high school, or they're a theater kid, they tend to be pretty frightened of jumping into competitions. So, three lessons that they have to internalize before they excel. The first is the lesson of anti fragility. This is going to be stressful the first time you're there. You're probably not going to win the first time that you do it, but a broken bone is going to heal stronger. And if you walk away from a contest, maybe not with a certificate or trophy, but with new knowledge about your presentational style that you then can create some actionable changes for in the future, that's good. That's anti fragile. I think the second lesson is you're in this to learn. If you win, that's great. But as I tell my students, generally, you want to win because you advance to other rounds of contests and you'll have better learning experiences within those other rounds. So winning is just the means to an end. And the final one is there's always another one. There is never just one competition, there's never just one pitch. And I agree that it'd be very terrifying if this is your one shot. And if you lose this one time, you can never do it again. Game over. But that's just not how any of this works. And if they learn those three lessons, it'll probably go well for them in the longer term.
I really like that because I teach the same way, that it's better to do a whole lot of speaking so that you see it as a speaking journey, so that you speak it as something that you can improve on each time. And so that makes total sense to me. How do you handle, or how do you suggest people handling when they feel nervous, and how do they stay kind of grounded and focused?
Practice like you perform. This is a common lesson. A lot of coaches teach it, I'm sure yourself included. But when I say that, I mean you got to simulate the experience of the competition before the competition happens as exactly as possible. For instance, if you get involved with the International Public Debate Association, this is a league that has some divisions for college students, but also a division for adults that you can jump into and then debate throughout the whole season. Let's say you know that it's going to be an in-person contest and it's going to take place across a whole Saturday and you'll do 6 rounds of debate. Then during the week leading up to the contest, you should do 6 rounds of debate in person. That way it's not so scary. Most people are terrified of public speaking because they don't do it regularly. And then because they don't do it regularly, they feel less inclined to start doing it, which creates this negative feedback loop where it becomes this frightening thing that they never do. People who excel at contests simulate the competition experience before the competition starts.
Mhm. Well, I think it's not just, it makes total sense. I also recommend if someone is going to be getting on stage somewhere, that it's not the first time they're giving that talk, that they should set up either live rehearsals with people actually watching, or to give it to their local libraries or Rotary clubs or whatever, so that when you're stepping into more of a high stakes experience, that again, you feel like it's partly in your muscle memory, you're used to looking at an audience, you're used to being in the limelight.
Yeah,
You know?
100%. That's how they
Yeah.
can delight in that limelight.
Yeah, so how they can delight in it. That's absolutely. So this one of the things that I was very intrigued by in speaking to you is you spoke about how there are all these different structures of giving talks. And how many did you say you had that you work
There's a
with?
lot. There's dozens of different structures of giving talks.
Dozens.
Yeah.
And so, like, how does one decide on a structure?
They start from those three questions: the why you, why me, why now? And think about it from their audience's perspective. If their audience is an audience that's open to being persuaded, then I think there's a four-part structure you'd largely do with the talk. I call them the four P's. You'd open with a problem. Spend some time convincing your audience there is a problem. We can define it clearly and specifically, and we can recognize it as being perhaps an abstract problem or perhaps one that's very close to home. You agree on the problem, then you give a proposal, some kind of plan. Here's how I'm saying I should fix it. Third, you give the proof. I think this plan is going to work because of this precedent. And then finally, you preempt. You say, first, let me clarify what I'm not saying we ought to do, just in case I'm being misinterpreted. And then second, let me address some common questions you might be thinking of right now so that I can show you I've thought about this and the plan is going to withstand that level of inquiry.
Hmm.
Now let's switch to something else. Let's say that you're doing not a talk that's about persuading someone of a thing, but more a talk that's about convincing people about a different mindset as opposed to a specific plan. That's where you're going to use a cause harm solution framework. In an introduction, you'll say, I think that we need to be more generous. We need to be more thoughtful. We need to be more mindful of inequity, whatever it is. Cause harm solution says, let's talk about the reasons the problem exists. Let's talk about the harms of letting it persist. And then let's say what we could do about it together. So long as you're able to get where your audience is coming from, then it's easy to choose what's the structure of the talk that will address the audience's need.
So I'm trying to see how this can be applied to someone who works in a company that needs to present either data or what their team has been up to, or maybe they need to share their team with the company wide in order to let them know, why you should reach out to us to include us in your project. Like, what should these professionals be thinking about?
A deep level of the audience's interest. I think the great example is for a team meeting. First question is, how many people on the team believe the meeting shouldn't be happening at all? This could have been an email or a Slack message. So you got to justify to the team why this needed to be an in-person or Zoom meeting that's taking their active time. If you can understand why they'd be willing to come, then that means it'll be easier to get to the second layer of this, which is what do they think they're going to get out of it? And then how could you give them 10% more than they thought they were going to get out of it? Maybe if they thought it was something as simple as I wanted the free donuts. Okay, throw in something on top of the free donuts, maybe some bagels and lox on the side. In that case, it's not even about the talk. It's about the community feeling of coming together and sharing your thoughts. But I think that oftentimes speakers start from a place of what about me? What am I going to need to do to feel comfortable here? As opposed to what about my audience?
Right,
Why do they care?
right, right. So let's say somebody is needing to give a financial update. I get this all the time. Like, how do you make something like that interesting? How do you create a story out of figures?
Yeah. I think it's the level of knowledge that the audience has. Because if you're giving the financial update to folks in the finance department, you can talk very technically and they'll understand you. And you probably are less burdened by the idea that you have to translate it into a story. But if you're handling somebody who is entirely devoid of financial knowledge, then you're probably going to have one graph and you're going to explain that graph very briefly, where you'll say something like, as you can see, revenue projections are down or they're up, and here's why. In general, I would advise using the problem proposal proof preemption structure for something like that. You're having the conversation either because there is a problem that leadership needs to address with the finances, or there was a problem, but there isn't one anymore because you fixed it. In either instance, it's opening with a story about, look, as you know, things were incredibly difficult during the last financial year. It was a very difficult time in the last quarter. And we saw that had to do with downsizing. Luckily, we've got a way to address it right now. This is the plan that we're proposing to help handle this. We got a couple different versions of this. We think it's going to work because of these reasons. And we thought that you might have some questions here, so there's actually some things we'd like to address before we get into your live Q&A, just in case you were thinking about it. That's easy to follow. People get that. And the question is, do you have to start leaning on heavy analogy because your audience deeply does not understand the data that you're providing? Or do they have some understanding, in which case there's less translation?
Got it. Got it. All right. So I want to pick your brain in another direction now. So I work with a lot of, let's say, entrepreneurs a lot of coaches. And a lot of times they'll be wanting to give a talk at the local Rotary or Chamber of Commerce or a business organization. And would they also follow this particular framework, or might there be another framework if they wanted to share, they wanted to expose or people to their service, and they are obviously solving a problem if they're a coach, a service provider? Is that the format that they would naturally lean into, or are there other structures that they might consider?
Yeah, I think that I would probably do a past versus potential structure. And the way that I would address it is, here's the past of your organization, the one that I'm reaching out to. In the past, there's been some lack of something. That's the problem I'm trying to solve. Now here's the potential. If I'm able to get in and give a talk, help solve a problem, things could look pretty good for you. I think that some of this, especially when coaches are starting off, might seem like it's an excessive amount of unpaid labor, but I think that it's useful to demonstrate value. The folks at Udemy, who you might be familiar with, and if people in the audience are not familiar with this, Udemy is the sort of Duolingo for public speaking, where you put videos of yourself in, and then the AI breaks down. You could pause more here, have better eye contact there, change word choice there. The way that they generally advise doing outreach is take a recording of somebody in the organization that you're trying to cold call, and then do your analysis of the recording of their speech. Send it to them and say, if you were my student, here's how I could see you growing. What do you think? And you might think, well, they might never respond. It's a waste of my time. But you improve your craft just by doing that amount of additional work. So that's something that I recommend for the group that you just spoke about a moment ago.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's really, really cool. So let's take one last one. So when I think about keynotes, the way I've been instructed to think about keynotes is that there are different stakeholders in the audience. There are people who are at different levels of an organization, for instance. There are decision makers, there are the managers or leaders, and then there are the people who are more the implementers. And that one needs to not get so much into the nitty-gritty as much as staying on kind of like the key idea of something. So would this be the persuasion model? Or again, would it be totally depend on the information and that you were trying to get across? And what you feel like you've been brought into the organization for?
I think that, especially when you know there's a bunch of different stakeholders in the audience, you probably want to do tiers of lessons that each hit at different audience members' concerns. Sometimes this might be called the individual, institutional, international model if you're in a competition where you're trying to reach a bunch of different people. But you can imagine that being grouped into, marketing and finance and operations if you know these are distinct groups within the audience. My big takeaway for the keynote is you demonstrate more value by shutting up and letting the audience talk. The audience is going to fill in a lot of blanks in small segmented activities and call and response moments. You don't need to talk for that long in a keynote before the audience says, okay, I like their speaking style and I like their message. Or think, I've already learned this lesson and I'd prefer this become more of a workshop where I'm actively engaged, because it's easy to tune out a keynote. So when I think about keynotes, I think the best point of comparison is a really good night of improv. Not that you should be coming in and improvising, but when an audience goes to an improv night, they know they're going to be part of the show. I think the same thing is true for a truly engaging keynote.
So that one should leave space for a little bit of interaction.
Yes, I'd push it beyond that, though. I'd say more than a little bit of interaction. I'd say a lot of interaction
So
for successful long keynotes.
would that be speaking with your neighbor, or would it be actually standing up and moving around? Would it be contemplating yourself? Like what's going on in
Yeah,
your mind, Iain?
it, it'd be a battery. It'd be all of the above here. So for example, if you're doing a keynote that's just basically about how can somebody be a more effective speaker with raw executive presence, agnostic towards their content, you might do a drill like the watermelon drill. It's a nonsense word drill. The idea is you get somebody to speak, but they can only say a nonsense word, even though the topic might be incredibly complex. So let me try this really fast. Can you give me a very complex topic?
Are you asking me? Or are you
Yes.
asking the audience?
Anybody here?
Anybody here? Gotcha. And then let them
Yes.
respond.
So let's say, yeah, that they throw it in. So let's say the topic was something as complicated as a disappointing prior fiscal year. Let's say that's the case. If I'm using a nonsense word, it'd be something like watermelon, 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 watermelon. At some point, you start getting that was a disappointment to we have to shift our mindset. If somebody can convey the idea without having the ability to say the actual word, that means they're probably improving their general delivery style. So imagining that drill in the context of a keynote, it might be the speaker demonstrates, and then someone gets called up on stage to demonstrate for everybody else. That's more interesting and valuable, I think, than just having the speaker talk about it in the abstract and say, figure it out on your own time.
I love that. I mean, I feel excited about that keynote already. It's like I want to see what's going to happen. And maybe I want to be that person that goes up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so great. That's so great.
Yeah, definitely. And some people won't want to, but that's
Of
okay,
course.
because there's at least a few people in the audience who will, I think.
Yes, absolutely. So, that kind of like brings me to another question I have. And so, like, I have a way of having people practice, which is very similar to your watermelon exercise. I call it the I don't care game. And we work with this sentence, I don't care what anybody thinks, because a lot of the people who come to me who are afraid of speaking in public do care what other people think. And that's part of their issue, is that they're worried about what other people think of them as opposed to think of their message. And so we play around with it, emphasizing it in different ways. Like, I don't care what other people think. 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 And so we play with this in lots of different dynamic deliveries and characters and emphasis in order to practice that there are so many different ways we can say any single sentence that we say. And that when we become aware of these variations that are possible, we can feel into how do I want to say that right now? And whatever comes out, you just kind of enjoy how it emerges. So that's one of the techniques that I use. I wonder what are some of the exercises you recommend for your students and clients to practice to that they can do like on a daily basis that can improve their speaking over time. Did my voice cut
Sure,
out
I'll give
there?
you three. One
Okay,
One
great.
of them is emulating excellence. This means that you find a speaker that you deeply, maybe this is me cutting out. Give me one moment. I think there might be more on my end. Let me see what's going on here. Can you hear me clearly?
I can hear you now. Yes, you were cutting out a little bit earlier.
Okay, so I'll go back to those three. That means a speaker finds someone that they deeply respect, they appreciate their style, they like their delivery, and then they, looking at the transcript, perform it trying to do a perfect impression of the speaker that they respect. Then they say, I'm going to now redo it without doing an impression at all. I'm not going to copy any of the cadence, vocal tics, facial expressions. I'm going to try to make it my own entirely. And the third layer is, now that I've made it my own in terms of delivery, I want to now create the exact same message, but reuse none of the phrasing of the original speaker that I respect. That can help them break down what is it about the speech that I liked and what can be improved on when I apply my own style to this speech. The second is spar, or spontaneous argumentation. Uh, you okay?
Yeah, now you're back.
Okay. The second is spar, or spontaneous argumentation. This is when someone gets a very simple prompt, like a cats are better than dogs, summer's better than, and then they debate back and forth. 2 minutes for one side, 2 minutes for the other, 2 minutes of questioning, and then 2 minutes of conclusions where you address the other side's points. This is a version of a category that's done in the Professional Speech and Debate Association. Very good training wheel, so you deal with a low stakes confrontation where you have to articulate a position that you might not even believe in the first place. And the final is a tape playback where you play it back on 2 times speed, because if you can't be understood when it's 2 times as fast, that means you're going too fast at the base rate of speaking. Second, you perform when it's no volume at all, only the video, and you notice things about your facial expressions, your body language. And then finally, you play it only audio, no video. And when you've got that, you're going to notice, is there anything about my speaking cadence, not just the rate, that takes me out of it? The more you inoculate yourself to the common anxiety about, I don't like the sound of my own voice, and you get used to the sound of your own voice, you might start to like it, and it starts feeling less scary to hear it.
Yeah, I love all those different variations. I do have a module in my program called Watch Yourself on Video Without Cringing because I feel like yeah, everyone who watches themselves easily find the things that they don't like, and my sense is that when we have these reactions to ourselves unconsciously, they can get in the way. But if we clear them away and we cultivate an attitude of acceptance, appreciation, and desire to learn, then all those things that you said become something that's fun. It's like a game because
Absolutely.
yeah, because then you're not, defaulting to this says something terrible about me that I don't like, and I don't want other people to see it either. So
Right.
yes, so that's beautiful. I really enjoy all of those particular activities, and I do think of it as game. And I feel like this is what we want to get to, is this idea that speaking can be fun, and it can be like a game, and it's something that we can continuously grow from and grow in, because speaking's our human design. Everyone was born
Yeah,
to speak. Yep. Yeah.
I agree.
So when did you decide you loved speaking? Were you like 3 years old and entertaining your family, and it just went on from there, or did it happen later on?
My last name is Lampert, but I wasn't able to say my last name because of the speech impediment. And so after going through a lot of speech therapy where I had to say chocolate peanut butter until I could eat some chocolate peanut butter, that eventually taught me that if I spoke the correct way, there could be some kind when I was in high school. This is a category where you've got 2 minutes to think after being given a prompt. Then you have to give a 5-minute speech. And I found that I loved it because there were so many stories I had learned about when I was a much younger kid that I now had the ability to share as I got older.
So this was yeah?
I, sorry, I think that I just froze again, but you know what? We're carrying on. We're being resilient and anti-fragile. You were saying?
We are being resilient and anti-fragile, and I think anyone who lives in this age of technology needs that, don't they? Yes. So uh, I was thinking that the chocolate covered peanut butter probably helped you enjoy those experiences and want to, uh, it kind of like clued you into, actually, I even like this just for the storytelling.
Yes, exactly that. And I think starting to apply, do something that
Oh, we're losing Ian here. I'm so sorry, everybody. This has been amazing. I'm listening to Ian. Everything he says feels so clear. It feels so organized. It feels so well thought out. Obviously, he has done, you know, decades of speaking, and he does it all the time, and he teaches it. So he has a way of expressing himself that's so fluent and easy to listen to, and story based and very concise and right to the point. And I just hope that you've totally enjoyed this episode, and I don't know if he's gonna be able to make it back on. Yes, he did make it back on. I'm just singing your
we are
praises,
good.
Ian. I'm singing your praises because I was just saying how it just is so evident in how you speak, how organized your mind is, how concise your thoughts are, how it's also formulated and visual and audible all together in a way that makes it very easy to understand. And it's clear that you obviously walk your talk, and you're a five-time competitive champion for a very, very good reason. So thank you so much for, all that you've been sharing. I'm wondering, before we close off, have you ever had a speaking experience that you didn't feel so good about?
And
I like
before I
how
share
you
it, I want to make sure that
ah, isn't that hard? It's like this is like the open loop. He's about to start, and then he disappears, and we wanna hear that story, like, when did this 5-time competition champion have a bad day, and we want to hear it, and we hope we'll hear it. If we don't, I'll have to have him back on because I want you to hear it too. Ah, there he is. Okay.
Okay. He's here and he's willing to share this information, assuming that everything is stable here. Uh, I think that I remember very early on that I had a pretty negative experience. This was my first debate tournament ever. The first topic that we received was about suspending habeas corpus during the Civil War. I had not yet studied the Civil War in high school, and I didn't know what habeas corpus was.
And was this given to you as a topic on the spot? And you had no chance to look it up? You had to just speak about it without knowing what it was? Okay, so here we are, intending to be very resilient. And I actually have an idea because in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be on Iain's podcast. And I wonder if we can save this story to when we're on your podcast, Iain. Or let's see if your voice
Do
comes out.
that. There's something about spectrum in the air today here in Sun Prairie, Wisconsin. There's something about spectrum in the air today in Madison, Wisconsin that is quite difficult. Clearly, it's not connecting, and so I think that it's probably best to save it for that podcast. That's what I'm surmising.
And then we can bring people over there. And just to give people a heads up that what we're going to do on Iain's podcast is he's going to take my big idea of helping people get over the fear of speaking, and he's going to demonstrate one of the story structures or the speech structures as so that people can see how do we take something and we actually create an outline. Is that correct? Is that what we're going to do, Iain?
Exactly that. We'll do it live.
Okay, that's wonderful. So, you've given us so many wonderful ideas to think about, specific suggestions about how to structure the talks for different situations, for professional settings, for keynotes. And I just want to thank you so much because this has been just a joy to listen to for me, because I feel like I am on a journey for becoming a better speaker myself, and I can see how this is one of the steps in my journey as well. So I'm going to just extend a big thank you to you, Iain, for coming on. I am going to share before I get off. Let me just pull this up in case you don't. If you have a voice, you can say where you want people to connect you. Otherwise, you can see it on the screen. It says, okay, it sounds like you're live. Why don't you say it yourself, where people can connect you to you? It's at authentalk.org, AUTHEN talk.org.
I think I'm here. It's www.athentalk.org.
That's wonderful. So that's where you can find Iain. Check him out. Listen to his podcast. This guy is brilliant. He's fun. He's fun to listen to. So much knowledge. If you want to uplevel your speaking skills, you got to include him as one of your teachers and mentors. So thank you so much. And thank you all who have either come on live or who are watching the replay or listening to this on the podcast. I'm signing off, Linda Ugolo, and I'm wishing you delight in all your Limelight moments.